welcome back to my channel. It has been several weeks, possibly months, since I've recorded my last video, so I'm glad to be back and I'm glad to have you back. So I wanted to pick up where I left off with my Awakening into the Void series, so I want to get started on that. Where I last left off, we had moved house due to a massive flood that occurred in our home. My stepmother and sister's house where I was staying, and the new place that we moved to was not big enough for all three of us to occupy. So in that case, I had to move to another friend's place. And these family friends, as I said previously, were good friends with my dad, and they'd extended their help in a multitude of ways after his passing. So this was just another way that they were helping us, and they offered to let me live with them for a while in exchange for work and helping them babysit and just some tasks around the house that I could help with. So it was a great exchange. And it was also a really great time for me because for the first time in after my dad's passing, I had like a period of time that I could actually rest and recuperate and kind of process the grief. And it's just one of the things when you're grieving, I feel like rest is such a necessary component to that process. And oftentimes when we are grieving the loss of somebody, we just carry on with life right away. We do not give ourselves time to like sleep, just sleep. Sleeping is one of the best ways to reset and just process heavy emotions and come to terms with the new reality of the absence of someone who's been a constant in your life. Even if he wasn't right there, like, my dad, his presence was definitely held up a huge space in my life in many ways. So to process that, like, rest is such a necessary component, and oftentimes we never get the chance to do that. So being able to stay with these family friends gave me that chance. And so they gave me a space in their home, which was big. I was able to do my art there, and they were just super kind and helpful, and it was really good healing time for me. So I spent like 2 or 3 months there, and in that time I was working on some significant art projects. I was really getting my art business off the ground, or as far as like taking product shots, like of hats, just some of the merchandise that I had already made. I was able to work on my website, just all of the like little the business aspects, or the I can't think of the word. I'm always looking for words, but all those little aspects of the business building that I got to do while living with them. And they lived out in the country as well, so they lived, I wouldn't say off grid, like they definitely lived on grid, but it was out in the cuts. And at the time I still was not driving, so in a sense I was, with them, I was able to come back in and out of town. But if I was on my own, I was definitely pretty much stuck out there. So it was just a good, I would call it like a retreat period for me. And it was also what I would consider a ground zero. So it's like I no longer had a solid place to call my own to live. I didn't have a car, didn't have a job, so it was just right at ground zero. What I do and always have is my artistic abilities and my creativity, and just certain skill sets to get me through. And so being around these friends, they're just really magnanimous energy, really helpful. And they were able to connect me, make some connections for me that helped me advance in certain ways. But before then, I was just able to, I had friends out there who were encouraging me to learn how to drive. And this was in the dead of winter. It was what is called a polar vortex, so a really horrendous winter in Michigan. So just like heavy snow, record low temperatures, blizzards, like you name it. It was pretty intense that year. And I got a lot of time to like think and process and kind of what I would say is just kind of figure out like what I wanted to do, like what was the next step for me. So it was a great space to meditate on my next step and be in that mode of manifestation. And I did. I was able to do that. So this was, and I didn't know at the time that that's what I was doing, but it was just fascinating how I was able to rapidly change my life from having nothing to all of a sudden having a job, a car, and a place to live within like a short period of time. So, in living with these friends, as I said, I was working on art, working on my business, and there came an opportunity. They had a connection where I was able to apply for a job in town. Um, and so I took that up immediately. I had some past work experience, not particularly in this arena, but I gave it a shot anyway. And due to their connection, it was pretty much a shoe-in. So that was such a lucky situation for me. So it was at a cannabis dispensary that was very patient focused. So they were very focused on patients who were dealing with like very serious health ailments, like cancer and just dire situations a lot of their patients had. So it was it was a kind of environment that was really um, health focused, less focused on kind of the recreational aspect of cannabis use and more on the medical aspect of cannabis use. So I really liked that, and the environment was beautiful. They also had a gallery there where they um, featured artists' pieces. So artists were able to sell their pieces there for a commission. The dispensary would take a small commission, and they just offered a lot of things there. So it was a really great environment and just a good place to start in that sector of, in that arena of the cannabis industry. And so I was able to apply there, and a friend of mine, I was hired almost immediately. Like they really liked me. I nailed my interview, and so I was hired. But then living way out in the country it wasn't like a viable fit. So once I got that job, I ended up moving back to where my stepmother and my sister were, which it was a little complicated because there wasn't really any room for me to stay there. But I was closer to work living there. So, and I was able to get rides in and out of town. But shortly after that, I was able to acquire a vehicle, and it was through a friend of friends. And they had a car. She told me about it. I told her if she could ask them if they could hold it for me, and they ended up selling me this vehicle, being my first car. I obtained my license. Like it just all happened in a series of time. So it just felt very miraculous for all of these things to be happening, like having a place to stay, after the flood, chaos, and then my friends being able to get me into an interview to get this job at a really beautiful, heart-centered space dispensary that really cares for their clients and customers, and getting my license, which was, it was like a last minute thing. It's like my permit was just about to run out. I felt like I had just enough practice to pass my test, and I did. One of the aspects of the test was the parking, like the parallel parking, and I almost failed that. That's like the first part of the test, and luckily I got that. I just went really slow and passed the parallel parking test, and the rest of the test was history. And then I got a car shortly after that, so I was able to drive in and out, to and from work, and it was just incredible how much I was able to build. This was within like 3 or 4 months that all of this happened. And not too long after working at the job, I was networking with some people, and I found out that there was a room available in an apartment complex that was not too far from where I was living or from where I was working. So I connected with these women and was able to get a room in their space. So it was incredible how everything just kind of fell into place. And so I had a new job, new place to live, a car, which was such a new thing to me, like having mobility, being able to take myself around, and it was just it was it was awesome. I was very grateful for everything that was on the up for me. And I really wanted to work in the cannabis industry as well. I thought that was something at the time, I really thought it was something that I wanted to do. So being able to find my way into that it was just incredible. And again, with the help of friends, and it just showed me how capable I could be by just, seizing opportunities and seizing the help that was around me, and not feeling shy about receiving, in those moments. So it was very necessary to be in that receiving space and in the space of seizing the opportunity. So action is very important when it comes to manifestation. We can't just sit and wait for things to happen. Like, when the opportunity arises, we have to move towards it and be, action oriented in order for things to like really blossom, or, either they're going to happen or they're going to not, but it's not really going to happen without us moving forward and moving towards those things. So it was just great how everything was falling into place. So at this point, things were working out really well for me, and I was making new friends at work. Someone had started the same day that I started, and he and I became fast friends. Like, we were just like this, just the same kind of vibe, both of us, same kind of attitude. We're both very kind of like buck the system kind of people, and hard-headed, just we're not very easy. We're not the best to obey authority. And he actually didn't stay at the job very long. He was a musician, just a free spirit, and just did well enough with gigs that he could sustain with that. But for me, I definitely needed the job, and my art was not sustaining me enough to have to be able to rely on that. But I was already starting to kind of build a community, and he was connected to some other people that I already knew. And so this job was it was centered in the downtown area of this town that I was living in, which was, definitely more active. And so through that, I was able to really get connected with people, and through this new work friend, being that he was a musician and just well known in the town. So through him, I was able to get more connected with people. And also through the connections that my dad already had, like, it's like something that I did not want when I moved there was to like get caught up in the small town bullshit, but it happened. You know, when it's not a small town, but it's small enough. It's a small enough community that if you know so many people, then you're gonna get, you know, get caught up in the circle of the web of gossip and all of that BS. So it was interesting, and I really enjoyed the work that I was doing, and I enjoyed working downtown and the new friendships that I was making, and you know, I was living with these young women who were definitely free spirits as well. We had different levels of cleanliness, which was became an issue later on. And what was very confronting was, you know, when you're in a workspace, the different personalities that you work with. And as I said, like, I'm a very defiant person. I stand my ground. I'm not always the easiest person to work with, especially if, you know, I don't work well with people who are not direct, who are not honest, or who are passive aggressive. So when I'm confronted with those kinds of attitudes, like it just like riles me up, and then I get, you know, I can become really I don't want to say vicious, but very, you know, confronting. And that can come across vicious to some people, or just like not for people who are more passive, or who are more, you know, beat around the bush, pussyfoot. It can be a bit much for them. So there was some clashing personalities in my workspace for sure, and I was definitely navigating that. And just, it's confronting for me, because it's like, it when we learn through other people, we learn about ourselves through other people, how people react to who we are and how we show up. We learn these things, you know. And it was the same in my home environment. I remember, you know, my roommates, they love to fuck. They love to fuck, and our walls were paper thin, and it was just like, it was just a constant in that house. And so I was just like, with the, you know, like, trying to have like a semblance of respectability in that aspect was difficult. I remember confronting one of the roommates about it. I was like, yo, you know, can you make sure to close your door when you're doing that? And she just bold-faced lied and told me that she wasn't. It was weird. So that was an interesting, it kind of made me feel weird living there, because I was just like, wow, like, how you're gonna lie about something so small, like, just lie like so easily, like it was just like, it just rolled off her tongue. So that made me feel unsafe, because it's just like, you know, I'm gonna be honest, like, I just asked you to shut your door, and then you're just gonna bold-face lie to me and say that you weren't fucking in the other room, when I mean, I heard you. I heard, it was your voice, like, and I could hear exactly where it was coming from. So that shit is like weirdo fucking behavior to me, and I don't really vibe with weirdo behavior. Um, White lies, any of that bullshit, like, doesn't fly with me. And then the cleanliness aspect was bugging me. So it's just like, you know, several steps forward, and then, you know, getting confronted with personalities, and, you know, people recognizing that I'm moving in with strangers, I'm working with complete strangers. Like, how safe am I in these work and living spaces and environments? So it was interesting. That's it. You know, it was great at first, but then, you know, as things started to settle, these things were kind of showing themselves. So I was just adjusting and being in the space of observing, and you know, going with the flow as well, because, you know, that's how I was getting my paycheck. I needed a place to live, so I had to just kind of roll with the punches at that point. Um, and I was given an opportunity, so I started to I was working with this woman out of Detroit, and she was a professional body painter, and her work focused on the African diaspora, and doing kind of demonstrations in different events and throughout Detroit that featured what she called living statues. So she would have models that would come and she would adorn them with paintings and and regalia, like different clothing items from different traditional African tribes, and she had it was kind of like visual storytelling that she would do at events through these living statues with the body paint and their different outfits and hair pieces and everything. And so I was able to join her on that venture and volunteer for her, and it was just an awesome opportunity to learn more about the African diaspora and the adornment that came along with a lot of the tribes throughout Africa. And so through that opportunity, I was able to meet some women in Detroit that I became acquainted with, and I was started to build a friendship with, and that was really exciting for me. I felt like I was able to meet people that were more on my level and just more connected. You know, they were artists as well, and so we connected on that front, and so I didn't feel so isolated in my home space. And you know, work was cool. Work was pretty solid. There was some personality clashes, but for the most part, it was a place of it was like a bit of a sanctuary in my life, my work situation, which was nice. And the work friend that I had made that was no longer working there, like he was also a safe space for me. So it was great to have like these connections throughout, and especially in Detroit, like having people that I could connect with there and be in and out of there it was awesome. I was very excited about that. And they were models, they were artists, they were just creative people, and that was really inspiring and very motivating as well. So one of those artists was she was very encouraging, very motivating as far as like putting ourselves out there and just trying new things. And she made me aware of this opportunity of a fashion. It was a group that put on fashion shows in Detroit and other cities, and they offered modeling gigs for the shows, and they also offered opportunities for designers to feature their work. So this woman, she fully encouraged me to contact the director of this group to see if I could feature some of my pieces that I had that were already ready. And she also encouraged me to audition to model as well. So I did both, and through her, I was able to model model for a couple of designers, and also feature some of my work. So there was a lot of action happening, you know. As I said, like things were building for me. It was just like on a whole new level. I was able to get a job in the cannabis industry. I was being active with my art and, making connections in a town that I felt was very art focused. Like Detroit is just such a great positive community of people, and specifically Black people, and it's just the energy there is so fruitful. Like the people are just beautiful, absolutely beautiful, very conscious people in Detroit, and very pro-African, pan-African. They're just a vibe. I've like, it's definitely one of my favorite communities that I've ever connected with. It's a community that I've never felt more like embraced and welcomed in a community. So that was just such a great thing, being out in the Midwest and being in a new environment, from where I was used to on the West Coast. And It was exciting. So while things at home were a little shifty, like I was excited to have this connection there, and you know, things were just happening. So it was a really exciting time. And it was really exciting, but then confronting following that. So as I was saying, you know, I've run into different kinds of personalities, and what a theme that became so glaring at this time of my life was that I kept running into these characters that were just very self-centered and controlling, and I didn't quite know, sorry, I keep shaking the camera. I didn't quite know what the issue is, or like how to pinpoint like their personality types, but I was starting to learn these things at the time. And what we now know is narcissistic personalities. These were becoming very prevalent in my life at the time. And so learning about that was became part of my spiritual journey during that time. So I'll finish this video here, and in the next video I'll start to introduce some of these characters and characteristics that were popping up that were just kind of jarring to me and just became lessons later on. And yeah, so thank you for sticking by, and I look forward to sharing more, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you so much. Have a good night.